Hi, and welcome to the Lensrentals Podcast, where we talk about images and the people who make them. I'm Roger Sakala, the founder of Lensrentals.com. I'm Roger Sakala. I'm here today with my son and co-owner of Lens Rentals, Drew Sakala.
Hello.
We have a special guest today, Craig Blair, who's the founder of Canon Rumors, which I've followed for a very long time. Also, at one point, was the owner of Lensrentals Canada. And we're here to find out all kinds of things I don't know about Craig. I've known him for a decade.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. Give us a little background on yourself.
Wow, that's a broad question.
Well, you're from Canada.
I am from Canada. Got into photography about 15 or so years ago. My education background is in business and culinary, but I didn't have the work ethic to be a chef, so I decided to start a blog and sort of do something around photography, and it has worked out. I had no plan for this to be my career, but it happened to work out that way.
We have a triumvirate of people who are in careers they didn't plan on then today.
Yep. That's true. You're a prime example of that.
Yeah, Drew too.
Yeah,
true.
The law is just a little too tough for me, so I rent lenses instead.
When you started Canon Rumors, was it just kind of a whim?
It was. I've told the story before. Like I was playing too much World of Warcraft, and I needed to do something else. And Keith over at Northlight Images in the UK was already sort of putting rumors and stuff on his site, but no one had really branded rumors for camera companies as of yet. So I just put a free blog up on a $5 a month web server account, and the rest is history.
That's awesome.
And what year was it founded?
What are we, 2008.
Okay.
So you were founding that about the time we were starting Lens Rentals.
Yeah. That was a golden era, I guess.
Well, I paid
especially for photography.
I paid $50 for my website, so I feel like I was, more heavily invested than you.
Nice.
So as it started rolling, how did you, obviously you can't talk about people who helped you out, but were they mostly just volunteering? You didn't go search out people who knew stuff. I assume they just came to you?
Yeah, people always have always just come to me. I've made it a point to not sort of bug anyone that may be NDA'd or may work for Canon or whatnot, because you just don't want to put people in a position to do something that is against their employment. But if they offer the information, I will gladly post it. And I'm sure there's been some official leaking done by Canon in the past that sort of get things out to build some hype.
Right.
How do you? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, how do you sort through what I presume to be a large pile of unsourced rumors you get? How do you kind of figure out which ones are at least legitimate enough to post about versus the ones you just completely ignore?
Well, first be logical, sort of understand Canon as a company and what they would probably bring to the market. Two, a lot of language in the way stuff is sent and the way it's worded and the way it's presented to me. Stuff that's overly detailed 2 months out from a product announcement is probably nonsense. Mm-hmm. But I find that the most accurate stuff is the sort of the vague stuff, and you sort of have to read between the lines. Because a lot of people that do leak the information, they don't want it to be too detailed, whereas, Canon Inc. or whatever can sort of figure out where it came from.
Right. Do you get a lot of people who know part of the project, like you get information about the sensor and they don't know anything else about the camera? Or
it's very rare that I get great technical stuff that would come from the engineers. I think it's more once marketing gets a hold of it.
Okay.
Then it starts to leak like a sieve.
Yeah, marketing people are leaky people, I think.
Absolutely.
As we sit here in the Lens Rentals marketing studio. Well, you've done some other things besides Canon Rumors, and we were fellow renters for a while. I think you didn't like the business quite as much as we do. I don't know exactly how much of that was just the geographic location.
A lot of the challenges with Lensrentals Canada were logistics. It's a massive country with unconcentrated population, so dealing with just moving stuff to and fro, it was so difficult. We spent so much time dealing with Canada Post. And because there's so many rural and out of the way rural communities, you couldn't use stuff like FedEx or UPS because there's simply no way to have stuff sent back to you.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it was quite difficult. Canadians as well tend not to be they use the internet a lot, but they tend not to want to shop as much on the internet like Americans do. I went to a Google conference and they were explaining to that Canadians are very web savvy, but it's a smaller percentage that actually purchases and buys things and trusts things on the web. So
a suspicious lot then.
Yes, it was a profitable business for us, but it was it was obviously never going to be like what you guys have. But once we started to get stolen from, and it was coming from within Canada Post itself. So this wasn't customers stealing things. Well, I guess they were working with someone within Canada Post. But when your logistics company is robbing you, or people within it, it becomes quite stressful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a harder business than people think, and I think you had a lot more of the difficult parts than we did. But it's interesting, you did other stuff. Now, the thing that you do that I'm always kind of envious of is apparently Canon Rumors can run from any country in the world, and you've been to almost all of them, I think.
I do like to travel a lot. My goal was always to have a job where I could travel and just do it wherever. Before the .com bust in the 90s, I had another website that I was earning income from, and I knew that was sort of where I was wanting to end up. And it just happens at Canon Rumors, I fell into that, and wherever I am, if I've got internet, we're good to go.
What is your favorite country to base out of?
My favorite country, probably Laos or Indonesia. Those are probably my two favorite countries.
Is it the food? You said you had a culinary background.
It's the food. It's the people are just, especially in Laos, are just maybe the kindest people on earth. Just the sights, the smells, the culture. I just love Southeast Asia.
Well, I know you spent significant time there. You don't go for a week. You go.
Yeah, there's no point in the week. Airfare's expensive, so So if we go to Costa Rica in the winter, it's usually for 2 or 3 months to avoid the snow, and that's a great time.
Mm-hmm. So everybody, here we're talking to the man that is what we all want to be when we grow up.
So you shoot with more than just Canon these days, from what I understand. Is that correct? You're not just a Canon guy anymore.
No, I shoot 90% of my stuff now with the Leica Q or Leica Q2. Just simple, 28 millimeters is perfect. You're going to miss the odd shot because you can't, get in close or zoom or whatever. But the camera's just beautifully laid out, and it's simple to use, and the file quality is great. And so I use that. But if I go do safaris or something, it's obviously all the Canon gear and whatnot. But
yeah, the 28 millimeter won't take you far on safari.
No, not at all.
Sir, get away from the lion, please. That's interesting about the Leica stuff. I found that camera really fun to use, but I'm so paranoid I can't go anywhere with one focal length. I start having hives or something.
Well, it's liberating. Like when we did 6 or 7 weeks in Asia, all I had was a Leica Q, and I'd say that maybe there's a half a dozen times I wish I had something else, but I think that's a pretty good ratio.
Yeah, I do find if I travel with 6 lenses and 2 cameras, I come home and all the pictures were with the smallest camera and the 40, 35 or 50 millimeter lens, and
absolutely
the other stuff hardly got unpacked. Let's break for a couple of minutes and then we'll come back with some more stuff from Craig Blair, CanonRumors.com.
Hey, this is Joey Miller, Senior Photo Tech at Lensrentals.com with a spotlight on the Fuji GFX 100. The Fuji GFX 100 has been my most anticipated camera of the year. I've been a big Fuji fan for a long time. I've been shooting on the GFX 50S and 50R for a while, and before that, the XT3, which I still shoot a lot with. The thing I was most excited about with the 100 is not only the much higher resolution. 100 megapixels is an insane amount of resolution. It kind of reminds me of getting my 120 film scanned at super high res and zooming in a whole lot. It's a very, very similar feel to that. But also the in-body stabilization, which is, for lack of a better term, a game changer. 100 megapixels, you really want to be super steady with your shooting on that camera. Anytime you raise resolution, any little movement is going to be amplified. Any flaw in a lens is going to be amplified. Everything's just going to be jacked up. So that in-body stabilization really helps you hold it steady and squeeze the absolute most out of that super high resolution, which is very important because why else would you be using that camera? From the physical aspects of the camera, it is a lot larger than what most people are used to. If you used a 1DX or a Nikon D5 or something like that, it's the same size as that. It doesn't weigh quite as much, even with both batteries installed. It is a little top heavy. It's got a removable EVF, just like the 50S and 50R do. Or sorry, no, just like the 50S does, not the 50R. It can use a lot of the same accessories, like the tilt adapter for that EVF, if you like to waist level shoot, like I do. Or you can use the tiltable LCD screen. Yeah, other than that, fantastic camera. One of my favorites. Bottom line, if you like shooting with the 50S, you're going to love the 100. If you need extra resolution, this is the absolute way to go. We don't carry anything else higher resolution than this. If you want something bigger, you're going to be looking at a phase 1 system and thousands upon thousands more dollars. This has been a spotlight on the Fuji GFX 100. If you're interested in renting it, we'll have a link in the show notes.
Speaking of cameras, we've had some interesting years here lately. Canon's come out with new mirrorless cameras. Nikon's come out with mirrorless cameras. We've got full-frame Panasonic mirrorless cameras. What do you think is going to happen to SLR cameras? Not say in the 2-year, 5-year, 10-year range.
They'll definitely be around for another 2 to 5 years. I think it'll be more into the pro level stuff. Mm-hmm. Because just like film merging to digital, I think the pros that use stuff like EOS-1s, 1DXs, whatever, were the last to convert. And I think that will stay the same. We'll get a 1DX Mark III and guys will use those for 5 or 6 more years. But 5 to 10 years, if there's not a market for them, then they'll probably go away. But I think if people keep buying them, obviously the companies are going to keep making them.
How hard do you think Canon is going to push this market? You know, because they tried before with the EOS-M and kind of gave up on it pretty quickly and, never really turned their focus fully there. I mean, do you see them really just to keep investing in this and to really put their, R&D budget into lenses for this system, even if it means they're not releasing as many new lenses for EF?
Oh, I think, I'd say a majority of their R&D is now moved to EOS-R. This year, no EF lenses that I remember. And I think maybe we'll get one that leaks out next year, but a whole bunch more RF lenses. So I think they'll definitely be going 100% that way. EOS-M was a bad system because there's nowhere to go. Like right. You have it and then you can't go anywhere else with it. It's, I think I could see that system actually becoming a regional system, because it's very popular in Japan. There was a time where Canon USA didn't carry all the EF-M lenses. So I think there could be a possibility for that there. I'm just guessing. But EOS-R is definitely the elephant.
Yeah, we kind of do a fun thing and do a time machine now because this episode won't air for a while. But as we speak, there's lots of rumors about a Canon 75 or 85 megapixel R camera. What are your thoughts on those rumors? And then we'll come back and publish this and look stupid in a couple of weeks.
I think they're definitely coming, or that sort of camera is definitely coming. I think the lenses had to get out first. Mm-hmm. You needed a sort of a range of lenses. I don't think people love adapting lenses. They'd rather use native stuff. And And with the 5DS and the 5DS-R not getting DSLR replacements, they need to go somewhere with a high megapixel camera. So I think it's likely early 2020, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a December announcement like they've done before, but probably ahead of CP Plus in February.
Right. That seems logical to me. They're going to force the high megapixel people to kind of come over, and the lenses are there for it. Those new lenses are pretty awesome, I have to admit.
Yeah, I can't wait to try that 1535.
Now the 51.2 kind of blew me away from the time I heard about it to the time I used it. There's definitely some hot things in there. So predicting the future, we've got obviously the whole camera industry is in retreat, and I think anybody who's logical is pretty open to the idea that there won't be as many manufacturers in 5 years as there are today. So who's your hot pick for who's not here in 5 years?
Wow.
Yeah.
I think the company in the biggest trouble is actually Nikon.
Have you used their new mirrorless?
Fuji's found their niche. Olympus selling lots of cameras in Asia, but Nikon seems to sort of be losing market share to Sony. When you start looking at market share numbers, Sony's numbers go up, Nikon's are going down, Canon's are actually going up a tiny bit. So I think that's the company in the biggest trouble.
It does seem like Nikon is who the Sony is really targeting, are those Nikon users. I know I talk to a lot more Nikon users considering switching to Sony than I do Canon. Part of it just could be that it doesn't feel like Nikon is as invested in the change to mirrorless as Canon is. I think some Canon shooters held off on changing to Sony over the last few years, hoping that Canon would come out with a system that can actually compete with the new E-mount A7 series stuff. And I think people have a lot less faith in Nikon actually being able to compete in new technologies than they do the other companies.
Yeah, they definitely don't seem to have the R&D budget that Canon and Sony have. Even just looking at what Canon's already, 10 lenses by the end of the year and 2 camera bodies on a brand new system. Yeah, and Sony obviously just seems to spend. So
that is their business model summed up.
Absolutely.
I will add to that because I meet a lot of engineers, and it's interesting to me how many engineers I meet who are introduced as and used to be at Nikon. It makes me really wonder how many folks are left designing there. Oh, interesting. I kind of agree with you. I think Nikon's in trouble, although I picture them becoming, honestly, the next Leica, a small company with a, dedicated following that explains why their stuff is so much better.
That's a good way to put it.
but there are you're starting to see a lot of it. Well, I've seen it for years. That Nikon look is special, and I think where have I heard that before?
Yeah, true.
But I think it's also we have to consider with even Fuji, but Pentax certainly and Panasonic. Basically, those are all hobby businesses for their parent corporations, and they're going to be at the whim a little bit of what the parent decides to do.
Yeah, I honestly forgot about Ricoh Pentax. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I think that's pertinent. But those are big companies that I think their camera divisions were a little bit of a status symbol, maybe, and maybe when times get hard, that won't be. I mean, Olympus, I think, is mostly a medical device company now.
A lot of those companies, their market share has been what it is since the beginning. So, I don't think Pentax is going to quit making cameras because they only have 1% of the market, because they
right.
didn't stop making them in the last 10 years when they only had 1% of the market, where Nikon's got a long way to fall compared to anyone other than Canon and Sony. I think that's what makes it a little bit different is they have a long way to go to fall. So they're, Pentax must be making money making cameras, or at least not losing a ton of money. But Nikon, it's the only thing they do, unlike a company like Pentax and Ricoh and a company like Panasonic, is they can't really keep investing in a product line that's not making money when it's the only product line they have.
Yeah, and I think Pentax and Fuji, like Craig said, have positioned themselves. They've got some status cameras. They can walk around proudly and go, but we've got the coolest whatever.
Well, Fuji and Pentax users are just about as passionate as Leica users are. I mean, the people that rent Fuji stuff won't ever quit talking to you about how good the Fuji look is.
I find an interesting thing about Fuji, though, when you look at their financials, that they make most of their money in photography in Instax.
Whoa,
Really?
It's not their digital camera. It's that little film business. Yeah, the last financials last year, I think that was the big profit area in their imaging department.
On the cameras or on the film itself?
On the film.
Okay.
Yeah, that's always been the film business model, though.
I mean, that's why Kodak, didn't want to acknowledge the digital camera existed, is because with film cameras, it's a little bit like buying a Keurig. You got to keep buying the coffee for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
So, I could see Fuji still, even as small as film is now, they're one of the last people left making film. That whatever market there is there, they've got it now, and it is a pretty captive market.
Absolutely.
You can take that. My friends who owned camera stores back in the day, we hear so much about, the internet drove the camera stores down and everything else. And they're all pretty open with it. The business model of a camera store was break even on the equipment and make money printing prints. And
same sort of thing as the car business. You make no money on the car. It's all on the service.
Right.
Or, the camera stores that survived are really great at selling accessories because that's where the margins are. Everyone's... not make, as expensive as a new camera is, the camera store makes very little money. They might make the same amount of profit on a filter as they do on a professional level camera.
When I used to work retail, I tried to explain to people that most of the time Visa made more money on the transaction than the camera store.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting, but I guess after all that discussion, it sounds to me like your prediction is similar to mine, that in 5 or 7 years, there'll be 2 mainstream companies like there have always been, except there'll be Canon and Sony. And,
yeah, I think so.
And there'll be some niche companies around them for people who want something different.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think about the A9 while we're on the topic of Sony? Just circling back one more time. I mean, do you think serious photographers who need something like a 1DX, that type of speed, will ever seriously use those cameras? Because we just haven't seen a ton. They're making super telephoto lenses now for that system. Do you really think that type of photographer, the photographer you see on the sidelines at the Olympics, will ever move into that mirrorless camera? Or do you think the stuff like the 1DX that you mentioned would be the last thing to go? Do you think that stuff will stand forever for that reason?
No, I think once autofocus and all that improve, guys will switch to the mirrorless stuff. I think too, a big thing is ergonomics. And when you're using a 1DX or a D5 or whatever, like the cameras are just built to be used by pros. Like they're just beautifully laid out. I find a lot of the Sony cameras are cumbersome to get around. They don't feel good in your hand, personal opinion. So I think if they keep sort of pro ergonomics, guys will definitely move to them. So you're not going to get smaller bodies, or I think that myth is over with now. Like there's a reason bodies are the size they are. Mm-hmm. So I think they'll definitely move, but they'll definitely be the last to move.
Once people started making, really truly professional quality lenses for mirrorless, the body size argument went out the window, because it's great that the camera is 50% smaller, but if the lens still weighs 15 pounds and is 2 feet long, I mean, what does it matter that the camera is 4 inches wide versus 2 inches wide? It's irrelevant. It looks a little ridiculous when you've got, a mirrorless camera on the end of a super telephoto lens. What is that solving? What weight problem is that solving?
Absolutely. I am looking forward to see what Canon does with the RF mount, because apparently because of that way that mount is, they can make stuff smaller lens wise.
They are definitely making shorter ones. They're still pretty wide.
Yes, but the 50 is huge.
Yeah, but the length of longer lenses and some zooms can be shortened considerably.
Yeah, so I think that'll be a good thing, but you can't get around physics, I guess.
And my own opinion is that Sony has positioned themselves to make sure their cameras are on the sidelines at the next Olympics, and they ain't making money on any of that stuff. The 600 and the 400 are great lenses, and I don't believe they're making a dime on any copy of those or the camera. But that's what they got to do.
There's a lot of free media involved in the every 4 year stories that come out. I did at the last Olympics. I will at the next one, of the whatever camera manufacturer's photo room at the Olympics that's just 500 square feet floor to ceiling of $20,000 pieces of equipment. Every photo site in the world picks up that article when it comes out, and I think every manufacturer wants that to be them instead of Canon and Nikon, and Sony's really going for it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, people do love those room photos.
Yeah, but
They should come here.
that's the one part of
Totally.
the Olympics. Canon always wins. So it's not a close battle yet. But Sony's entering the fray, I think. So that's good for them. And I think they've got to if they want to get in that market. So what other good rumors are you hearing, Craig?
There's nothing. I mean, at the end of this month, we'll get the EOS 90D, we'll get a EOS 60 Mark or M6 Mark II. Two more of the RF lenses will be officially announced that we already know about. Mm-hmm. And then 2020, it's the high megapixel RF or EOS-R. And then I think they will show or talk about a 1DX style EOS-R camera, even if it's not announced. I think there'll be something big ahead of the Tokyo Olympics.
Right.
And I think Photokina's back in May. So I could see them showing it, talking about it, and only, giving it to select photographers to perfect the system. Because you can't put out a pro camera if it's not ready. You can't rush those sort of things. Yeah. As much as my forum and readers want them to, I think it's better to do it right than to do it fast.
And that's the type of product you'd probably want to signal ahead of time just to make sure that anyone, considering jumping to something like the A9 stays put and waits on your product. I mean, if you're going to go into that market, why hold that secret till the very end?
Absolutely. I totally agree on that end.
How long does it take to develop a camera, Craig? If they come up with the idea tomorrow to make a R mount X camera, or whatever you want to call it, how long would it take them to get it into people's hands?
See, I think I've read from Canon engineers that the cameras are pretty easy because I think they just build off of the previous camera and work it out. But it's the processors and whatnot can take years to develop. Mm-hmm. So I think for a Pro, an EOS RX or whatever, you're probably 2.5 years to develop such a product. Whereas a Rebel, I'm sure they can churn one out in 6 months.
Yeah, I think it's pretty quick to dumb down an existing camera. A little more difficult to build up a new one.
For sure.
So what else is going on with you? Where are your trips taking you in the future? What countries are you going to visit that you haven't been to yet?
Well, I leave tomorrow to go to Canada, where I am, but I never go to Canada. So I'm going to do a road trip to the East Coast and get out to Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia and whatnot. So we're going to do 18 days of that, just see Quebec and all that jazz. And then my Cincinnati Bengals are playing in London in October, so I'll be flying over there to watch them lose to the Rams.
Is it easier to watch them lose in London than it is in Cincinnati?
Yes. I mean, the last time I went, they tied, which I flew across the Atlantic to watch a tie in the NFL. That was a little anticlimactic, but it was a lot of fun seeing my people there in London. But
have you considered an alternative team, a backup team?
I've tried, but they keep sucking me back. I don't know.
It's not with hope.
See, I guess the Raptors won this year, so I'm still on cloud 9. So the Bengals can suck. I'm fine.
And you're welcome for Gasol, by the way.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, it was our pleasure to help out where we could. Thanks for listening to the Lens Rentals podcast. If you have any questions or comments, let us know at podcast@lensrentals.com. I leave with this quote by George Lucas. Back to reality.